Debate discussion sometime. I emailed you twice. I'm getting a bit sick of waiting after you've acknowledged me without an answer. And as again, just like I said, like it's like a get in line thing, right? Like Rich and Weasel here is getting frustrated because he's not the only person that emails me trying to debate. I tell you what, Rich and Weasel, my Skype is the same. Go ahead and call in since you're so frustrated. Go ahead and call in.
People will go around hoping that you drown at the idea the sky falling down. Wow.
Yo, you are now live. What's going on?
Just calling in, like you said. I was just trying to get a handle on when we were going to do it.
Okay. Well, we're doing it now, it looks like. So I didn't know if there's anything you specifically wanted to discuss. But, you have the floor.
Yeah, sure. I think it was yesterday. You mentioned that you debated white nationalists in the past, and I emailed you about that during the stream. You read it on stream and said, yeah, we could do that, just not right now. That's not what the stream's about. So I was just trying to figure out when we would do it, but if you want to do it now, I guess we can do it now. It's a bit off the cuff.
Yeah, Again, I don't know exactly what you're wanting to debate still. So, like I said, just
white nationalism,
I get that. I just don't know what about like white nationalism that you're trying to debate.
That's what I wanted to figure out because you said you debated it in the past, and
I debated a guy that was a white nationalist on the more so. I mean, you can make an argument he was a more of a monarchist, but yes, no, I've debated that here on stream. That was what I was saying when I said that live. Like I've debated people of different ideologies and different political backgrounds. So that was what I was what I was saying. That was the whole reason why I brought it up.
So okay, then I guess I'm not clear. Do you have a problem with white nationalism?
What do you define as white nationalism? What do you personally define as white nationalism?
Well, I guess the better way I would define it is ethno-nationalism, meaning my belief is that every people is happier in their own spaces, and we should allow people to separate as is their wont to do and exclude people.
I mean, as long as it's voluntarily, 100%, segregate or integrate. Like that's been my position forever. Like as long as you're doing that voluntarily, I don't, you can want to get like-minded people for whatever reason. I don't care if it's for race, ethnic background, because you want to live in a community of people that like Game of Thrones. Like I don't care. Like it doesn't really matter to me. As long as again that's voluntarily arrived, then yes, it's. I know it's not the decision. It shouldn't be a decision of necessarily a state to make that decision. So if people want to, integrate, separate, whatever they want to do. So as long as they do it voluntarily, that's that's their business. Like me personally, I wouldn't, be an advocate of that. But if you want to be around whatever people, white, black, I don't care. If you have a particular preference that you rather live among that kind of people, then that's your business. Like I'm in no way to stop you. As long as you're not using aggression on other people, or forcing them to be a part of your, which is more so forced integration, or like kicking people off their property so you can build an area of people around that where you want people that I guess are the same racial makeup or the same ethnic background as you. As long as it's voluntarily arrived, that's your business.
Okay, so you would take issue if, say, like I guess the topic that a lot of ethno-nationalists or white nationalists specifically like to bring up when they talk about white nationalism is basically reclaiming America for white people and the people that founded the country. So you would take issue with something like that, where if white nationalists gained power and said, we're going to start instituting policies that What policies would you take issue with, I guess?
Well, I would take issues with if they're kind of trying to implement policy by way of the state, which is forcing people to do something, right? It doesn't matter one way or another. For the same reason I would oppose a guy that wants to forcefully integrate people in the same way as I've talked about the Civil Rights Act and stuff like that, and the issues that has caused. So I don't care who it is or for what reason. If that's something that you want to build, if you guys go set up shop in a spot where you guys own a property and stuff like that, and you want to be among your own white folk, fine. I think there should be no laws that prevents you from doing so.
If we formed a state,
it wouldn't be a state; it'd be voluntarily arrived. So I wouldn't call that a state.
You don't think that people can voluntarily get together and form a state?
No, because in terms of the state, as far as how I define it, or when I say that I'm against something, is the complete opposite. That would be not a state. I'm not against people being, voluntarily having their own communities and building their own communities or anything like that, or having third-party arbiters and stuff like that. That's not how I would define a state. Okay. However, but if whatever you call it, I don't care as long as it's voluntarily arrived.
Okay, I'm a little bit confused, I guess, on the concept of the state. Then, how else would we be able to exclude people if not by way of law?
I mean,
I'm genuinely curious. I'm not trying to.
No, I'm saying that if you guys have set up shop in an area like where it's you guys' property. So say if it's a set of 20 people and they have their own neighborhood, they call it white folk land, right? That they own the land, they own everything over there, the people within it, and that community of people, which each individual within that, and again, land that they own. If at white folk land, if at white folk land, they say, look, this is the sort of thing this is the community that we allow. We're not going to allow these types of people in this community, that type of people in the community, and all the people within that agreed. That is absolutely their right to do that, because again, they own the property. The problem with the state is that it's like, and then looking like America's case, they claim to illegitimately own this big territorial, sort of monopoly, right? And that's the problem with the state, is that, and it's obvious, not everybody within it agrees with each other, or they entered into it voluntarily. So no, I wouldn't call that a state at all, because again, it's you guys voluntarily arrived and you guys own the land. That's no different than you having a store and you say people that aren't a particular member of this store, this golf club or this gym can't enter. You know what I mean? It's no different from that. It'd be the same thing.
I guess I see it as a bit of an arbitrary line then. If it's like, okay, I guess I don't see the concept of the state the same way that you do. I see it as like a bunch of people got together voluntarily, like obviously I'm sure you can find cases of states that have been created through what would you call it, coercion. But I think for the most part, states are formed by a community voluntarily assembling and saying, this is the way we're going to run things now. And we'll have a few dissenters, but the majority will outweigh the minority. I think that's my view of like.
Well, yeah, if you're talking about democracy in that case, where the majority minority, then yeah, obviously that is what I consider a state, because if people within it that own their own private property disagree, don't want this to happen, and you just vote on their behalf, then and then you say, no, well, we're going to take it, and these are the rules that we're going to enforce. Then that is completely wrong.
Yeah, and I disagree with the concept of democracy as well. I think for different reasons than you probably. I think that there's a lot of really stupid people in this world, and I don't think that everyone should be allowed to just have the same say in what gets done in a society the same as everyone else does. So that's why I have a problem with democracy, because if we just had pure democracy, it'd be mob rule, and then the stupid people would run the world. So
okay. So yeah, like I said, if you voluntarily own you know, the land, and you know, like all the people over there, like again, which again, people master plan communities all the time, even now. Master plan communities, and if you guys want to master plan a community and you guys own the land to make that happen, whatever rules that you want to enforce is absolutely your business. And I don't think a state, and this is where even I you know, I obviously differ with a lot of these people who are advocates of what they're advocates of, more so on the opposite end, on the left side, because I think people should have the freedom to integrate as well as separate. I don't place preference over either or. I just want it to be voluntarily arrived. So I don't want people to be forced to be among people that they rather not be around.
Okay. I think we agree on that for the most part. I guess to cut to the heart of it, then why do you view why would you view the concept of white nationalists getting together and saying America's ours now, and then slowly, like people have discussed before how it's possible to get America back to a white majority through means of I guess you would call it like non-violent legislation. So like, you know, you could incentivize white birth rates, disincentivize minority birth rates, and stuff like that. Why would you have a problem with that necessarily?
Well, because it's again, you're talking about all of America. You're talking about dictating what a entire geographical area, a massive one at that, dictating what these people should do. Right, you're talking about dictating what these people within it should do, and then you again are placing preference among again white folk in this case, and you talk about their birth rates and so forth. Right. So my thing about that is I'm against that for the same reason I'm against what takes place right now, which is people get in these positions of power, and for whatever reasons. For different reasons, more so, they try to implement policies that benefit certain groups and through preferential sort of law and stuff like that. My argument isn't against that in itself. My argument is against the fact that it's not their decision to make. So if I'm of course I'm going to disagree with somebody, you know, being president or, you know, become a dictator. Been saying, okay, we're gonna make America white again, right? And I'm gonna be like, nah, bro. Like I live in a geographical area that you're trying to, then again you're using the state to try to enforce these policies and enforce these ideas. Of course, I'm gonna be against that, but I'm against that for the same reason I'm against anything else that people do in terms of utilizing the state to. You know, promote or endorse or enforce whatever particular personal ideology that they have. I'm going to disagree with that. I don't care if it's a white nationalist, black nationalist, integrationist, separatist. I don't care what that is. So I'm going to have an issue with it.
You just have a problem with the way it would be executed by means of the state.
Bingo. Like if you I go back to the fact voluntarily arrived. I do not think that you should be, and this goes for black folks. There's black folks that feel the same way that you may feel about white folk, or other people may feel about white folk, and they want to be in white folk land. There's other people might want to be in black folk, black folk land, or Hispanic land, or whatever.
That's generally the way people operate. Yeah,
right. And if they want to do that, let them voluntarily do that. I don't think they should. And right now, in a lot of cases, if they wanted to do that, it's illegal. So my thing, I don't think the state should be involved in that sort of setup, right? Again, for the same reason, if the state said, hey, guys, we're going to have all of these different cultures of people, and we're going to force you to, again, I think that's the most violent way to do things. We're going to force you to be among people that you may hate. You know what I mean? So I'd much rather you voluntarily separate than be forced to integrate. But for the same thing, I'm not for forceful separation in the same regard. So it's more of what the state does, and me talking about being against the fact that individuals would rather use the state and use force to form these sorts of let's say communities and such. I don't agree with that. That's where I'm at with it.
So if the issue is just the state, what if we did it through another means of, like, let's say, and maybe this is a failure on my part to understand anarcho-capitalism, but let's say we achieve the ideal anarcho-capitalist society and we can basically do whatever we want in that framework. Would you have a problem with, say, a corporation rising up and saying, and then this is our private property and we're only allowing certain folks on this property?
If it's their private property, if again, a corporation, I mean, if we're using that to be just business, not like a state protected, like, or state created entity, which is most illegally how it works right now. If you're just talking about a business having land and saying this is what we're going to enforce, if they have it, if they owned it, then fine. Like if you purchased it off the previous owner, or you homestead it, like that's your business, like that's yours. Like what you do with it is your business. Like I don't care whether you want to separate or not.
Right, and then in this theoretical, they say this is the people that can be on it. These are the rules we're going to have. This is the what would you say, form of decision making, blah blah blah, to sort of run this little society that we've created. I guess the point that I'm driving at is that seems pretty similar, if not the same, to the way a state should ideally operate.
Well, no, because again, that would be voluntarily arrived. The state is not. I think that's a core part of what the state is and what it does and how it operates, is that the state is not voluntarily arrived. Obviously, again, you look at, like in America case, there's so many different cultures and so many different people that disagree with one another, and everybody's fighting for power to utilize the state to force their personal ideals on everybody else. That's not what I don't consider if this voluntarily arrived, I don't consider that anything to do with the state.
Okay, maybe we can just agree to disagree on that. I see those as close to, if not the same, methods of execution. But
okay, I don't see how, because again, like one is voluntarily arrived and one is not. I mean, that's like the difference between.
I guess I don't see the involuntary. I'm just not seeing it, I guess. I feel like if someone's voluntarily. Like, I don't know how else you can participate in the functioning of a state if not voluntarily. Like, obviously, there's some things that you have no say in when you're in a state, and you know we can debate about that. But it seems to me like if you're going to participate in the way that the government is operating, if you're going to, I don't know, run for office and vote and do stuff like that, you're voluntarily operating with it. You're volunteering to the state, basically. You're consenting.
Nah, then if that's your position, then I disagree. Like I disagree wholeheartedly. I'm not consenting to anything that the state does, and so many people don't consent to what it is they do. Maybe they tolerate it for the sake of living to see another day, living to fight another day. For the same reason why people might think a cop enforcing an unjust, victimless, crime, being an asshole is something that they maybe against, but they allow it to happen at that point in time because it's they can live to fight another day. You know what I mean? It's just not worth death. You can't come back. You don't have extra lives or anything like that. So like that, I wouldn't consider what happens people existing within a state voluntary.
Oh no, not existing. I mean actively participating. I mean, obviously, you live in a state. It doesn't mean you're a part of the state and you're consenting to anything and everything the state does. I mean, like, let's say, like the examples I brought up. You vote, you run for office, you do things like that. Isn't that kind of like I'm voluntarily participating in this?
That you vote and run. I mean, no, I wouldn't. Because again, like I know, and definitely, if we're referencing what happens right now, that stuff is levied on us, right? That's a forced elect. That election happens. That election happens whether I want it to happen or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. But you can choose whether or not you vote in it, though.
Yeah, no, you can. Yeah, but that's not the voluntary. Me choosing not to vote is not voluntary in terms of participating in this again, geographical area where the state has claimed essential monopoly over.
Okay.
Like that's
Yeah,
those
yeah.
different
I
things.
understand. I think we're getting we're getting lost in translation here. What I'm trying to say is like, yes, clearly there are people that don't voluntarily participate in the state, and we could say, like, for the sake of discussion, those are people that don't vote. But then the people that do vote, wouldn't you say that they're voluntarily participating in the state?
No, I'm not. I mean, now, granted, that's an argument that even a lot of anarchists would make when they say like voting is violence and stuff like that. I don't necessarily hold that position because, again, that is something that, like, if we talk about what exists right now, that is something that is levied, is forced. So a lot of people, to minimize the damage, vote. Right, because that's what this geographical area again has more so condoned to a certain degree, again, to live to fight another day. So I don't consider the act itself. Now you can make an argument that there are people within the state that feel that way, and if they feel like that's the case, whatever. But again, we got to take into consideration that there's a large pool of people that are like, they don't want this to happen at all. They would rather be left alone. They would rather not have to vote for, like, and all of that stuff. So that's when, again, we get to talking about the involuntary versus voluntary. So I wouldn't say the act itself is like consent or anything like that in terms of even people that go get a driver's license or vote or something like that. I wouldn't consider that, because again, that is, a lot of that stuff is forced upon you. You know what I mean?
You don't think that shows a willingness to participate in the system?
Absolutely not. I think it shows because, again, some people vote with the intention of minimizing the damage. Like, and some people participate in what happens right now, like even with a driver's license, not because they can't drive. If I go renew my license, it's not like once my license expired, I just up and stop learning how to drive. You know what I mean? But in order to avoid threats of violence by way of the state, I may go get my license. Like, I don't consider that voluntary participation.
Okay. No. Yeah, I see what you're saying. You
know, so I mean, it's just, again, some people, and again, I think there's a case that can be made that there are individuals that look at it like that, but there's a plenty of individuals that not, and that don't, and even if and they own their own private property.
Yeah, sure. I think I see what you're saying now, and yeah, those people should be allowed to separate, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, I think we pretty much agree on that. I just wanted to clarify that point. Okay, well, that's, I mean, I don't think I have much more to say on the ethno-nationalist thing. Okay. I mean, it sounds like we pretty much agree on that.
Okay.
Could I bring up another point?
Go ahead.
I saw on Twitter today, I don't remember the exact tweet, but someone said something to the effect of, like, they used the triple parentheses meme and said, once you start to notice, you'll stop being a libertarian, just like I did. And then you accused that guy of having a complex about the Jews. And so I was just curious what your position on the Jewish question is.
I have absolutely no issue with Jewish people unless Jewish people, or it, like, just like any other people, white, black, want to use aggression, upon me. Like, I'm not getting into that. Like, as far as people have, and I said, yeah, he had a plex with it because he clearly did. He's like, oh, triple parentheses, yada yada. And I said, I'm not gonna abandon libertarianism because he had, he like a gripe with, Jewish. I don't have no gripe with Jewish people.
That was probably a poor way of phrasing it on his part, but I don't think he had a complex about it. I mean, I used the triple parentheses meme. Well, I did back before it got ran into the ground.
Excuse me, that's slang, by the way. Plex out in Texas, it means like beef. You know what I mean? Like, that's more so what it is. I assumed you meant like hatred or something. Yeah. No. I mean, like, it's like I have some issues with so and so. You say I got plex with them.
Oh, okay, so like a problem. Like, that's more synonymous.
Essentially, then? Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and so. Okay, so you don't. I'm trying to think of where to move from here. I guess it's just odd to me that, like, why wouldn't you see that as valid for someone to acknowledge that there's a pattern in the way that Jewish people tend to operate in society.
That's their business. I mean, they can acknowledge as whatever patterns they want. Like, I'm just saying that's on them. That's like, you know, whatever patterns you want to acknowledge, whatever you see, like that's your business. Like that.
I just think it's odd. I just think it's odd to call that an issue. To say that someone has an issue with Jewish people just because they point out they recognize a pattern.
Well, that's not what he said. He said that, you know, he, again, triple parentheses, and he's saying that once I realized who's, you know, whatever we were talking about, I don't even remember what the original subject was, I would abandon libertarianism. I said I would not, like, whether you call it a problem, beefplex, I don't care. He obviously sees there being a whatever with Jewish people specifically, and he makes adjustments on his personal political philosophy because of that. I don't like if you want to acknowledge whatever patterns, I don't like. That's not anything I care about. There's patterns all over the place, and that's not going to get me to abandon libertarianism.
Sure, maybe it doesn't get you to abandon libertarianism, but you don't think it would change your outlook even a little bit if you notice that there's a lot of people of a certain group that are performing a certain action that's antithetical to your liberty?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that there's a lot of black people that perform actions that are antithetical to libertarianism. You know what I mean? But again, I'm still a libertarian, and I'm also black. You know?
Yeah, fair. No, I know. I just took issue with the way you handled it, I guess.
All right. Well, okay.
Well, I just think it's kind of ridiculous that you would just say, well, okay, you have your problem with Jewish people then, but it's like I don't know. I'm just having a hard time trying to pin you down on this, I guess. This is why I just wanted to schedule a time to debate. I wasn't like prepared. I don't have any notes or anything like that. It's just off the cuff.
Okay. All right. Well, in that regards, I don't really know what to tell you. I'm not. If whatever you want to believe and whatever schemes you want to point out, like, I don't care, man. Like, that's ultimately...
I'm not pointing out schemes. I'm pointing out an identifiable problem.
All right. Well, whatever problems you have, that is your business. Whatever problems you personally have.
It's not okay. Okay, that's where I disagree with. I guess is the sort of the implication that this is just a personal problem that I have or that people have.
Well, it is because I don't have that problem.
No, you yourself may not recognize that problem. That does not negate the existence of the problem, though.
How can you dictate what's a problem to me?
Can there be a hole in the boat and people not understand that there's a hole in the boat?
That doesn't, but that's not like you don't get to dictate what's a problem to me. Like, if whatever I choose to emphasize and prioritize as a problem, that's the problem.
That's true. If there's a hole in the bottom of your boat, there's nothing I can say to stop you from sinking, I guess.
Yeah, but we're not talking about holes in the bottom of a boat. We're talking about.
Well, I think on a certain level we are.
Well, no, you're discussing your personal view in terms of what you identify and what you acknowledge as an issue with Jewish people. I don't share that. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't share that whatever term you want to use, gripe. I don't share that with you, and I'm under no. I don't, and I'm not even suggesting that you're saying it. I don't feel like I'm under an obligation to feel like that's a problem.
No, you don't have to feel like it's a problem. I just think it's ignorant to deny the existence of the problem. That's my contention.
Well, I mean, again, that is whatever you want to prioritize and whatever you want to have a point highlight in terms of putting out that you have a gripe with Jewish folk is your business. Like, that's not mine. Like, and I'm not gonna make it my business because I don't care.
Okay, so you wouldn't be interested in discussing the topic further? Because I don't want to make
not
you
necessarily. No, like I don't have anything to add because I don't have an issue with. I don't have an issue with Jewish folk. Like, that's not me.
Okay. Well, again, this is why I wanted to do this just wanted to schedule a time because I wanted to have more time to form my thoughts and come up with what exactly we were going to talk about, because it was just, I'm thinking out loud right now. Don't mind me.
Okay.
I'm just,
I mean, like I said, I can, if you know, if we can maybe down the line, maybe at some point in time, we can maybe get you back online. You know, it's your second time being on, but you know, maybe we discuss that when you have time to kind of look into what it is that you want to look into.
yeah, that might be good.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry again. You seem to kind of perceive it as me jumping down your throat in the chat there. I wasn't trying to like say, oh, you're dodging me or anything like that. I just thought it was odd that here I am. I emailed you one night. You said, yeah, not now. Then I tweeted at you. You said, email me, and you hadn't emailed me back the first time. So I was just trying to figure out, like, all right, what's going on, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if that was kind of how it was worded, I mean, I would have took it that way. But no, I took it as a, you know, like, hey guys, you know, you're frustrated, almost like I'm dodging or something like that.
Oh,
you know
no,
what I mean?
yeah, I just said I'm sick of waiting. Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't think there was any connotation to that, like you were doing anything. I just, like,
Okay.
you weren't responding to.
Yeah. I
yeah.
do get a lot of emails. Some of them they get lost in the sauce.
For sure, for sure.
But you know, that's happened. But we were able to get you on for sure.
All right.
Well, all right. Well, in that case, if you have nothing else to, you know, add, I will finish this the sandwich, and you know, I'll get somebody else on.
There is one more thing that I might be able to do off the cuff, if you wouldn't mind going somewhere kind of completely different.
Okay.
What's your could you clarify for me again your position on intellectual property?
My position is that, as it stands, IP is a state-protected monopoly. And excuse me, and yeah, I don't see it as it exists now, or what people consider it as private property or property in general, which is kind of redundant. And that's because it is not essentially a scarce resource like all property is. And by that we mean that it's a, and again, going back to the point, it's a state protected monopoly of ideas as it
is. It so is your problem with it the state part, or the fact that it's an idea?
Yeah, no, well, the state part. I mean, idea part is part of it too, but that's in terms of what the state, you know, again, the state protects this idea, and it's again a state, but it's a protected monopoly. It makes it basically, the state says that nobody else can produce this if it's like this, and so forth. And the argument that we make for it, libertarians, not all libertarians, because some libertarians even disagree with me on this, but the argument that I make, and other libertarians like myself, is pointing out the fact that all property is scarce. It's the whole reason. Scarcity is the whole reason that we economize, right? And ideas are not like a scarce resource, because if I have a slab of marble, or you have a slab of marble, and you carve something out of it, and somebody else carves that same thing, they did not steal anything from you. You still have that slab of marble. Is essentially the argument that's being made. Whereas if I steal the slab of marble itself, no matter what it is that I carved, you then stole from me.
Okay.
So that's why, and it doesn't mean that, you know, I'm a musician. It doesn't mean that I'm for or against people that want to be compensated for their work. I do think that. And I think that there will be, without said monopoly, there will be like technological, you know, situations where people will not allow double uploads of or stuff like that of people's work. You know what I mean, and stuff of that nature. And if they want to come up with that, that's fine. And I have no issue with people being compensated for that. That's just what we say when I say.
I'm sorry. I guess I missed it. You might have cut out there for a second. What exactly? How would you stop people from like just replicating your work and?
No, I was saying like I'm just using it as an example. I don't know how exactly they do it. Again, right now it's a state protected monopoly, so the market has not even tried to come up with anything. They've had no incentive to. But I was saying, just using it as an example, like if there is a site where people get, let's say, their music from, it's going to be a effort by way of those sites, because it benefits not only theirs but their artists that are on it, to ensure that people aren't biting from it, so they can't monetize it in whatever way that they can. I just don't.
So yeah. your alternative to intellectual property then would just be sort of like, well, the ideal alternative would be that people would just not, they would work for stricter anti-theft policies, sort of things like that.
Well, not necessarily policy, but more so maybe in technology, yes.
Okay.
But policy, not necessarily policy. We're talking about government oriented, but absolutely in terms of technology. 100%. That's again one of the biggest reasons that I'm against it. And I would love to see the outcome if it didn't exist, if it wasn't state protected monopoly. So then the market would have incentive to start coming up with things. And I actually think that even artists and stuff like that would be more compensated for that, because right now we operate where it's just like, all right, artists go to the state, get a stamp, whatever. All right, now nobody can produce anything like it. You know what I mean? And yeah, that's where I'm at.
It seems to me the best solution would be to slightly rework the system that we have now, because I mean, the immediate problem that I foresee is that people will just start making bootleg copies of your albums and start selling them for cheaper and stuff like that.
People do that now.
Yeah, exactly. People
do that now. But
like,
I wouldn't dare send a state at somebody to, even though people bite off me all the time. I wouldn't send a state at them, and I don't believe that that's something that I want to push for. But I do feel like that I do reap most of the benefits from sales, and a lot of people use a lot of these these different technologies, the Spotify's and the Apple Music and titles and whatever of the world, and we get compensated that way. I get compensated via shows and stuff like that. I think the system obviously would be completely overhauled if we didn't go to the state to monopolize these ideas. So I don't want to rework it, because again, it goes back to sort of what we were talking about with the nationalism thing, is that I want it just to be voluntarily arrived. And right now how it works, and again, I'm so familiar with this because I have to deal with it in so many different of different things that I'm involved in, is that I understand, like, copyright and stuff like that in terms of how the state does it. Is I don't want that.
Right. So your issue is the execution of the enforcement via the state. Okay.
Right. And I want to be very clear, and I'm not saying that you're making this claim. This is more so for the audience. I 100% want there to be setups where people are compensated for their work and creativity. I'm not advocating against that. I think a lot of people say, well, you're against state protected monopoly, aka intellectual property, then you are not for this, and that's not what it is. It's just that this is more so like how I explained it.
Yeah, my because I remember having this conversation with you and a couple other libertarians on Twitter back when it got brought up. Not so much with you, so much as the other people that like jumped onto me, but the sort of the ideas not being scarce resources part is what they got hung up with me on. And then there was also a bit where it was like intellectual property tells people what they can and can't do with their property and stuff like that. And that's a bit of a different issue, I think. But
okay.
The example that one guy brought to me was we were talking about the let's say, for example, I write a book and then someone sees what I've written down, or they buy a copy of my book more likely, and they take it home and they print a copy of it for themselves. It's like, that's not a problem. But once they start selling copies of my book for cheaper than I have, then it becomes a problem. And the guy was trying to say, oh, well, no, it's not a problem because it's not a violation of the NAP. What's your position on something like that?
He's not wrong in the sense that he may be a complete asshole. So I believe that is a problem. I would never say that would be a problem. I think the guy's an asshole for doing that. I just wouldn't send state goons to like kick his house down because he done bit off like my work. You know what I mean?
How,
and again,
how would we stop it then? Do you think?
Again, I'm not saying that you could. I'm not saying that you realistically could stop every single instance of. I mean, even now, again with the IP law, it doesn't. Like you can go find my album for free, some site right now. You know what I mean? Where I get absolutely no dime from it. So I'm not thinking that we just stop it completely, but I do think that there would be technological advancements, certainly as the age becomes more and more digital, that people come up with these different forms of technologies, you know, encryptions and all sorts of stuff, where it makes it difficult for people to resell it. Certainly online and stuff like that. And, you know, markets work the way they work. People are going to be more incentivized to go here and pay for it instead of going there. And that a place that people find to be more so illegitimate. So he's correct. He's correct in the idea that, okay, he didn't like necessarily steal from you. If the guy said it wasn't a problem, I would disagree. I say that's a problem. I call him an asshole. I believe that person is a complete asshole for doing that. I absolutely do. I believe that person is an asshole, and I would never advocate and say that is okay in terms of I'm fine with that. But in the same respects, if he did it like that, copied on paper, on whatever cover or whatever in terms of a book that I wrote, and he sold it like that, he'd be an asshole. But that book itself, that the scarce resource portion of it is his.
Yeah, I guess I would disagree with the idea that we'll call it intellectual property, I guess, for the sake of discussion. I guess I disagree that intellectual property can't be a scarce resource. I understand the idea that anybody can have an idea and that therefore it's not a scarce resource, but it seems to me that the importance or the scarcity of the resource comes into play when it's how you've constructed the idea. So like the example I put out on Twitter a while back was that, I understand why people would have an issue with, like, you've copyrighted the concept of vampires. No one can write about vampires anymore because you copyrighted it. And I understand why people would think that's unfair. But I think that's not what people are getting at. People are getting at the idea that it's like, you can't write the vampire story that I wrote. That's the idea. And so it's not about the idea so much as it is the way that the person has constructed the idea and executed the idea.
Well, again, when we say that it's not a scarce resource, what we're saying is that if you have an idea, for example, right, and I have the idea, I have the same idea, I have not taken anything from you in having said idea. And you can't see me, I have this Subway cup which I purchased, which was purchased voluntarily, which is so it's mine. And you take that cup away from me, I no longer have the cup, right? It's not like how ideas work, where it's like you are deprived of it, like you would a scarce resource. If somebody steals my lawnmower out of the garage, they stole the lawnmower from me. If I had an idea that how to build a lawnmower, and the guy had another idea to build the lawnmower, and he did that with his own scarce resources and created it, he has not stolen from me. Is what more so what we're saying when we talk about scarcity in that context.
Okay, yeah, I understand that. That actually helps a lot. That makes a lot more sense.
Okay. Yeah, for sure.
But so I guess the other thing about intellectual property was that in this same conversation that I've been referencing, where the guy was saying, that's not a violation of the NAP that someone would take your book or whatever you've created, make copies of it, and then sell it for cheaper. That wouldn't be a violation of the NAP. I guess
he'd be an asshole.
Yeah,
but yeah, like the reason why somebody, just to explain it, like the reason why it wouldn't be an act of aggression is because, again, he doesn't necessarily take from me. Again, I want to be clear, like, and I think this is where a lot of people get things twisted. Even other libertarians get it twisted. So, for example, when I talk about, I don't think boys should be, wearing dresses and dressing like princesses, a lot of people throw the libertarian card. Right. A lot of people throw the libertarian card at me in the sense of saying that, well, I'm a libertarian, I can't be against it. And that's not what it is. It's not what libertarianism is in terms of, it's not agreeing with everything that someone does, or even trying to prevent people from doing things. It's more so if you prevent them, like using aggression, like treading upon their private property rights. We're against that. You know what I mean? That I can say that, oh, that's just weird. I'm against that. I will speak against it all the time. And that's a difference between me beating you upside the head because of that, right? Those are two completely different things. So it's a similar thing here. Like, again, I want to be clear as I possibly can. I think if somebody bid off your work and tried to sell it for cheaper, which I think that there would be, certainly in a freer market, there'd be mechanisms to minimize that. However, if he did it, he's still an asshole. Like, I just want to be like, that guy is an asshole, and I think that people would shame the living hell out of him for doing it, and it'd be frowned upon. It's just, again, if he goes and does it with his own materials, that is stuff that he owns, like he didn't steal the materials. Like, it's one thing if he stole my lawnmower from my house and then sold that lawnmower, like he's more than an asshole. He committed acts of aggression. Whereas if he just stole my idea for quote unquote stole my idea for lawnmower creation, and he created it with his own property. As asshole as I might think he is, he's within his right, because he hasn't deprived me. I still have that idea to do it. You know what I mean? He didn't deprive me of it, which is what we mean when we say it's not that idea itself is not what's scarce, like we consider other forms property.
Yeah, I would disagree that he didn't, and obviously libertarianism probably operates under a slightly different definition of aggression than I am, but I would disagree that he didn't commit an aggression against you if he were to, like the example I keep using, take my book and make copies of it and sell it for cheaper than I am. I feel like that's a form of, it sounds gay, but financial aggression, you know, sort of like he's negatively affecting me by taking what should be profits going to me as profits going to him instead. And I would view that as a form of aggression. That's probably one of my issues with the non-aggression principle. It's one of the core reasons I left libertarianism, because I believe there's other forms of aggression than simply property rights and stuff like that.
Right. Well, again, I think that's where the disagreement is in itself. Like we when we use it's less about that's a semantic argument more so, because it's like we're disagreeing with what the term means. Like, but libertarianism is aggression in terms of property, right? It's in terms of property that we talk about something, whether or not that's what we're basing on, private property rights, when we describe what is aggression or not. Now, again, I wouldn't consider that aggression, because I don't think you're owed profit, right? You're not owed that. Nobody is. Like, if we
maybe I'm not owed profit, but someone just took profit away from me, though.
Well, not necessarily, no, because again, like I said, like profit is like that's more of a outlook of what you perceive you should get. But by that measure, if somebody opened a business that was similar to yours, and sold better goods for cheaper, and those consumers went to buy yours, you didn't have right to those profits. Like, you didn't have right, but like in that store, though. How is that a false equivalency? Because
I'm talking about someone who took a copy of my book or a copy of my work and sold it as his own.
I'm referring to the idea that, like, they stuck your profit. I'm saying that profit in itself is not something that you're entitled to, so they didn't take it from you. Because if that's the logic, like, okay, I thought I was gonna get this, you would, again, if we apply that elsewhere, we apply that to something else.
You don't think it's fair to say that that I write a book and I go to sell it, but someone else has stolen my book and sold it for cheaper, that you don't think it's fair to say that all the profits that he gained from selling my work, that those should have been my profits?
No, absolutely not. Like, again, because profit isn't what should be, or what you think. Like, you're not entitled to it in a sense that you're owed it just because you wanted to charge somebody something for something and somebody else did. Therefore, you didn't make the money. Like, again, if we went to that logic in terms of how markets and people within markets compete with each other, there'd be a whole lot of things that you could point to that people even actually had measurable profit. You know what I mean? Because the store could have, like, for example, this is why I don't feel like it's a false equivalency, because a store, for example, could have been there, could have existed, could have already been making money off of the product, and another store can open across the street that makes better, cheaper products. Or it's just, you know, maybe they like the store. People buy products from different people for different reasons. Like, again, some people, even though Target costs more than Walmart, people like to shop at Target. Some people like the atmosphere. So, but again, if that happened, you know, and that person or business opened a store, and now it's hurt. It does hit your bottom line in the sense that, well, what you were projected maybe to make, you're not any longer going to make it because people are spending their maybe dollar elsewhere. But that's literally everywhere in the market, though.
The reason I say that's a false equivalency is because I'm not talking about like I made a cup and then someone else made a cup with a similar design to me. They're just making it with better quality and it's cheaper than mine. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about I created I
get that.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. You're saying that, again, like you had it and somebody copied it like verbatim and then went and sold it for cheaper. But I'm saying, like, the profit itself was not owed. Even if they did that, like, again, asshole as it might be, the profit itself is not something that you're necessarily entitled to. So this is why I would never define that as aggression. That's just you explaining the fact that somebody may, because even so, there may be people that just somebody buys it, maybe sells it cheaper. That does not mean that everybody is going to still buy from them, or that may not mean that people prefer to buy it from them just simply because it's cheaper. Though that very well may be the case. Again, going back to the example of a Target and Walmart, even some of the same products are listed as listed more in those stores and whatnot. But again, some people like the atmosphere and prefer the atmosphere of a Target over a Walmart. So it makes sense. But again, I think they're assholes. I think that person that they bit off your idea and they went and sold it. That's cheaper. That person is an asshole. And I think that with that incentive being created, minus the state's protected monopoly of these ideas, I think people would still come up with things. I don't think that it would be that would be the case in terms of that would, people are just biting from you and then they undercut you and then they sell the goods and, that's it. Like, no, I think that you have put forth an actual market need that is necessary. And that is, you want people that have created something to be compensated for. And I think that just like anything else, markets would come up. And it's sometimes it's hard because we look at it in the context of what the state does. And I don't know, Rothbard talked about this all the time. Like, it was like if the state, when a generation where they were the only people that made shoes, people would really be groomed to believe that there would be a massive issue if shoes wouldn't get made, or everybody would be without, or people would be without shoes, and all of this stuff. If the state monopolized shoes, and I think it's the same thing here. It's like the state monopolizes this as a state protected monopoly known as quote unquote intellectual property, and that's the only way that we see people being incentivized to create, being incentivized to sell their goods and such, is because the state quote unquote protects them and makes it literally illegal for other people to sell that similar, product. So I just think the market would come up with something far more creative than that. Maybe even more effective, because people still bootleg now, and people still sell products for cheaper, for what would put it out there for free. Again, you can get my album for free on numerous websites that I didn't authorize. Like, none of my band members put it up there, but people did it. I do think there'll still be creative ways in which the market will come up to not only compensate them, creators and such, but also figure out ways to minimize bootlegging. Okay. Because I think that person is an asshole. I just want to be clear on that. Like, anybody that does that, like,
I think you made that clear. Yeah.
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 That's not cool.
I think there's a little bit to respond to there. I think we're just going to have to agree to disagree. We agree.
Okay.
We agree that it's a bad thing. I guess we just disagree on where to go from there. I think
Okay.
I see it as the job of, you would call it the state. I don't know what I'd call it. I guess that I would see some other entity that would have the role of making sure that that doesn't happen, and you would say that the market would find a way to figure out a way around that. And I guess my issue is that I don't see that happening even today. Like you keep mentioning, there you can get tons of bootlegged products, and I've unfortunately been fooled into buying some myself, on occasion. And I feel like maybe you would mark it up to the state's regulation of the market or something to that effect. But I feel like if the market had a way to figure out the issue of bootlegging and theft of people's art, then it would have figured it out by now.
Well, my argument is that they have, and some of them have come up with ways. I mean, we see audio watermarks all the time, in which if something is like, for example, and this is for people that don't listen to music. I'm just using this as an example, or make music. Like, believe it or not, even if you upload my video directly, we still get paid for that on YouTube. Like, we still get paid for that. Because it's audio watermark, like it picks it up. The sound is picked up. Again, it's amazing technology, but it doesn't matter if 50 more people upload this song. Like Statism, let's say one of our most popular songs with self ownership. Let's say that's our most popular song. If they upload that, I still get paid for it. I still get paid for it if they upload that on those channels, like such as YouTube or Spotify, or more so Spotify. It wouldn't get by at all, but YouTube would allow them in a lot of cases to do it, but they'd still pay me for it. You know what I mean? I still get paid for it. So but yeah, so I think they actually have come up with ways. However, I believe that they would be a lot more, lack of better terms, aggressive, not literal aggressive by the libertarian standpoint, but aggressive as in, being more intense about finding those alternatives. If the state didn't have its monopoly, it's more of the incentive thing. It's like when I talk about roads and things of that nature, like right now it's monopolized. So there's not really a big time incentive for people to come up with creative ways because it just is right now. I think if that was freed up, you'd have people coming up with ways that we can't even foresee. That's why people are advocates of free markets in the first place, is that we recognize that creative people, there are a lot of smart people that are a lot smarter than myself and yourself, and we can't envision that. We can't possibly envision, like the camera that I'm using right now. I have no idea the technology behind it, or the encoding software that I'm using to stream. I have no idea how to create any of this. Well, I have a little bit of an idea, but as far as the streaming stuff, but the camera stuff, I have no idea. But we get people, and we have these products that we buy and we sell that are awesome, that none of us could ever in even a million years figure out how exactly to do it. But there were a group of other smart people that were able to do it in that certain avenue. So even this is why I always accept the idea, even if I can't possibly foresee it. I mean, it's like asking, somebody, I don't know, 300 years ago about like a Lamborghini, like the cons. If you could explain, go back to George Washington, right, and explain to him that there's this device that goes really, really fast, that it's on wheels, is powered by all this motors and gas and all of this stuff. And it goes up to, if you had to put it in horse terms, because that's the only way that he could really express it. But it could go. It's like it has X amount of horsepower, and it would go, however many times as fast is what it goes. Like that concept would sound like that dude is a free. He'd be like George Washington probably slapped the man, think he's crazy because it doesn't make sense in the context of back then, but. Markets have found a way, and they've created these things, and now things that we all accept and we as a reality and we use in our everyday lives at some point had to be conceptualized. At some point in time was an idea that a group of people, or maybe even one person, came up with and got the ball rolling, and then you had all these, things grew, things got more and more technologically advanced, and here we are. So I think the same thing would be for that, and just for anything else, is that even if the state controls it, the problem with their control is that they don't really they incentivize it, but don't to its fullest potential. Because if it was completely removed tomorrow, people would be like, all right, we got to figure this out. And you have all of these creative ways that, again, we can't even conceptualize right now. We can't possibly see that because you and I don't possess, and that doesn't mean you are stupid. It just means that, you know, in this regards, we don't know. We just don't know, and humans throughout history have found out these creative ways to come up with these advancements. And again, if you would ask them even 10 years, you look at the 10 years growth of technology, and even in the past 10 years has been crazy. And I think even more so, if you freed the market in those certain avenues, people will come up with more creative ways.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely see your perspective on that. I maybe it's just because it was a bad example, but the concept of a Lamborghini being explained to George Washington, I feel like he could explain that to him as it's just a chariot, it's just a carriage, but it goes much faster. There's a device in it that makes it go faster. And the point that I would make with that is that we can figure out ideas and concepts, and maybe we might not be able to so effectively put them into action. And that, you know, I would argue that a progression like that is more of a thing of efficiency than it is a problem with, like, we couldn't even, like, conceptualize it. We could conceptualize it, you know, we just couldn't figure out maybe a very efficient way to execute it. So I think that in the same regard, I feel like if we could have figured out a concept or an idea through which the market can moderate and prevent these types of thefts, or whatever you want to call it, from happening, then I feel like we could have figured out at least an idea.
Well, again, like I said, we have figured out creative ways to even compensate people, or like, again, I have to talk about YouTube. Yeah. Like, so it's not like that hasn't happened. It absolutely has. I'm saying that it would happen to a much higher degree. And again, going back to the whole George Washington thing, I mean, I think we're, you know, yeah, you could say it's a carriage that goes, but again, he's not thinking like what a Lamborghini actually, the technology behind it, right? Like, that is completely out of his realm of possibly understanding. Even some individuals now don't understand how motors and stuff work. So, but again, like, it happens and it exists. Right. You know,
and I'm not saying from a technological or mechanical aspect. I'm talking about purely ideas. That's what I'm referencing.
Well, yeah, I think that there's it's like a deal where it's like you have an idea how to make it happen is more so what we're dealing with. And I think, again, that's more so what the market is trying to figure out, or would be in charge of figuring out when it comes to what we consider IP, is that, okay, we want artists, we want creators to have the most control in terms of the development of what it is that they personally created, whether it be monetarily, whether it be, intellectually, whatever have you. We want them to give the creator the most control and reap the most benefits. That's the end game, right? That's the end game. Yeah. So it's like, how do we get there? And that's what I mean when I say I don't even think we've hit the surface of what it is that we could possibly do if the state got out of the way and then incentivized the entire market. Because a lot of these smart people are not going to just sit here and sit on the information. They're like, okay, we got to figure out, that is a big time market need. We have to figure out how to do this. And they will come up with these ways, again, that we just couldn't possibly think of in terms of a more technological thing. And this is why I'm such a fan of things becoming more digital, because it actually has made these things. We're seeing this happen at a more rapid pace, like all these advancements and the creatives that are happening right now. We're seeing this happen like back to back to back because of the technological advancement. So I just think that the market would come up with that and have more of an incentive to, just like anything else. I just don't make an exception for it. Just like with anything else, it doesn't matter, what it is. I think if the state got out of the way, that the market would then be more so incentivized to come up with ways to, even if and I don't think that it would be, I talk about roads all the time. Maybe if the government got away from the roads, that doesn't mean that it's just going to be a big transfer, right, of what happens now, right? A big transfer of like, well, the roads are now monopolized by the state, most of them, well, at least the creation of them absolutely is. Even if you build a private road, you have to go through the state to do it. But even if they completely remove themselves, that's not to say that what exists now, the interstates that exist and how they exist now, would just be moved into private hands. That's not. I don't think that would happen. We're talking about a complete overhaul of the industry.
Right. Yeah. I listened to a bit of your video on the roads today because I noticed some guy on Twitter was like, explain to me the roads, and you linked them to your video, and he just wouldn't watch it. Yeah. I watched a little bit of that, and it's something to the effect of like the corporations would sort of be incentivized to sort of take up the mantle of the roads.
Yeah, if that's the case, but the market also may be incentivized to skip over the roads altogether, and maybe in 5 years' time we flying over them. You know what I mean? Like, and then at this point, we're not even having this conversation because I'm in a jetpack on my way to Houston. You know what I mean? I just needed a landing spot. I didn't need the actual roads as they exist. But that's what I mean in terms of a complete overhaul of what it is. That may be the case. I don't personally believe that it would just be moved over into private hands. Like, so how it exists now would just be privatized in a sense. I do think that it would be a complete overhaul of the entire industry. Automobile industry, certainly in that case, would be the biggest thing. But yeah, no, same thing with the IP thing. At least that's my view of it.
Okay. Yeah, I think I have a better understanding of your view on it now.
For
sure. I will probably just have to agree to disagree on that point.
Okay.
Do you have time for one more? I heard you had someone else lined up.
Yeah, I do have Steven lined up that I want to get on. I mean, it depends on how quick it is. I kind of have been holding him up.
I don't know how quick it would be. It's the libertarian reconciliation of children, if that makes any sense, the way I just put it. How would you reconcile children in a libertarian society?
Like, what do you like reword it?
Well, my understanding of Rothbard for a long time, and I was incorrect. Someone called me out. But my understanding was that the only way that we can properly reconcile children in a libertarian state or society, sorry, bad word. The only way we can reconcile that is by classifying them as property until they reach a certain age.
No, that's it's less about that. It was more about it's a truth and not necessarily. I like to think of when I word how it is that Rothbard, it says that, or more so importantly how I would advocate is that yes, up until a certain age, what Rothbard. All right, let me explain this, because what Rothbard was trying to do is kind of like what Hoppe does, Hans Hermann Hoppe does, where he's trying to answer this really like maybe a more complex question that a lot of people would give credit for. And what he's trying to do is word it in a way that people understand. Hoppe does this and gets crap for it all the time. Another anarcho-capitalist, and gets crap for it all the time because he's trying to get people to understand it in terms of how the libertarian advocates. So the way I word it, not like necessarily how Rothbard words it, I look at it like, yes, up until a certain point, children, like you can use aggression upon like a child, right? You can absolutely use aggression upon a child. What Rothbard is trying to explain is that, okay, in the libertarian stance, how do we define parenting, right? Because you got people that raise kids and we don't treat kids like we do adults. There's a clear distinction between that. There's a clear difference between how they are raised, and they're raised more like, you look at, people say my son, my daughter, and we look at the parents the right to raise that child in the best way that they see fit, not again using aggression upon them, beating them upside the head. That is different, but relatively understanding that is their right over, let's say, the person next door. It's not the person next door's right. So this is why he talks about what is property, and he tries to word it in the sense of property, because that's really the only way that you could explain it in a libertarian sense, right? Because again, how else would you define it? Because You can't. I can't do that to you. I can't go tell you, hey man, you gotta get to bed at this certain time. You know what I mean? I can't go tell you that,
Right.
you can't do this and you can't do that. But I can do that with the child, right? And we accept that. And what Rothbard was trying to do was explain how from a libertarian standpoint, it would make more sense. And as offensive as that sounds to some people, because they look at it, property, whoa, like that's the reality of the situation.
That raises a lot of philosophical problems.
Right.
I think.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo. But that's what Rothbard was attempting to do. But it's just like it's the Hopper effect thing that he deals with right now, where he tries to put something in layman's terms. And because like it's a more complex, it's a more dynamic thing. Like parenting is different. You know what I mean? Than other human interactions. It gets them in trouble because they're trying to pin these different words and on different things. So yeah, it's not property in a sense that I just go buy and sell children. Like no, like not that's not what this is. It's more so he was trying to express and explain that okay, look. It's a property concept. That's the only way we can define it, because you get to do that to your kid, but you can't do that to other people's kids.
Right. I think the issue becomes then like, so where do you draw the line? Like when, and not to assign Rothbard's beliefs to you. I don't know how you view the concept of children, but where do you draw the line between them being property and them being free moral agents?
Well, my thing is, the only thing I can do in that regard is just give examples. Like, I don't think that you should be able to, abuse, your child. And by abuse, I mean like punching them upside the head because, they at the end of the day that they are children. You know what I mean? And this is why I think the whole idea of how I look at personal parenting, and some of this comes from a philosophical background that has little to do with libertarianism, the fact that families. And I grew up studying Christianity and stuff, growing up. But in the same respects, I think that line is, again, when that turns into like legitimate abuse. I mean, when I think of some of the things that we look at and we argue about with people and what they're doing to their children, like. That's where people draw the line. Like, well, I personally draw the line. Like, you can't abuse them. You can tell them, and I think the whole idea of a parent is to preserve their innocence as long as you can until they are at that age to where they're an adult. And now it's time for them to make their own decisions, because they're free people and they're able to make their own decisions. But obviously that there's a distinction, and the line is difficult to draw in a sense that it's more of it has to be example based, and like where you draw the line. Like this here is objectively like you can't do that, right? And other things are like, well, that's different. So I think that's more so why the Rothbard was trying to get people to understand it in terms of property.
Yeah, I think Rothbard said something similar to that effect. Like there's a line, obviously, like mutilation and torture or something like that, and it's like, clearly, I think you put it pretty well, but like how would you in a libertarian society, how would you prevent parents from doing things like you were tweeting about today, like putting their boys in dresses and stuff like that?
Well, that is, that's something that I can't personally police in a sense of like sending somebody to kick down a door and stuff like that. That particular instance. Now, if they're beating them down, that's a little different. And I think that what I would, in a freer society, I think that there would be, certainly if you're living among a community of people, I would certainly only want to live among a community of people that understands, like, hey man, if we see you beating up on your fucking kid, like abusing them, like, hey, we got the community's doing something about that. We're not just gonna stand around and let you abuse the fucking child, right? That's got to be something to address, and I think that they'll come up with third-party arbiters and mediators and such to try to figure that and solve that issue in the event that it absolutely happens. Now, as far as that, I think that's more cultural. I do think that's more social, about the boys and the dresses and all of that sort of stuff. being dressed like princess, I would absolutely condemn that every chance that I get.
Yeah. Do you see that as a form of abuse?
I think that it's a form of abuse if they are trying to like do some sort of like a literal abuse. If they're trying to, let's say, live through their kids, which we often see, where
Like living vicariously through your children.
bingo,
Okay.
right? And like even going as far as to giving them Jesus, which it sounds messed up, but this is what they do, where they start giving them, medicine and chopping off things and body parts and
Right.
and stuff like that to try to quote unquote transition them into what it is that they feel like. That's abuse. Like I think under every circumstance, that absolutely is abuse. That's where I draw the line with that. Now, as far as that in itself, you can make the argument that they are setting their children up from a societal standpoint for failure, right? It's bad parenting, right? And I think, this is why I'm always talking about the parents. It's like it's so difficult for me to just focus just on the child. Like we got to focus on who's facilitating this and what it is that they're doing. So that in itself, like putting them in that sort of clothing, like I can't say that in itself just alone, right? That article of clothing in itself is abuse, but absolutely if they're trying to groom them, into that is, and I have an issue. I have an absolute issue with that. But even more so, even if they didn't do that, I still would condemn this on any chance that I get, like vocally, and such. Even in a free society, for sure.
Yeah, and not to make you repeat yourself or to drill you on something you might have already answered, but how would we go about preventing that in a libertarian society?
Like
how would
preventing which one? Like
how would we prevent? Let's keep it simple and say children transitioning.
Oh yeah, no, most
sex.
definitely. I think that's a crime. Like I absolutely think 100% that is an act of aggression, and I think that under every circumstance, just like anything, whether it be theft, murder, or what have you. I mean, I'm not equating it to murder.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go on. Finish.
No, but I'm saying that in itself, to me, I see that as absolute aggression under every like the meaning of the word. Like that is what I personally consider. And most libertarians, even ones that are among the LGBT community, would agree that that's not right.
Sure.
That there's something functionally wrong with that. Now, what the actual punishment would be in the event, I mean, I do think that you're talking about punishing whoever made it happen. Obviously, the parents or some that's facilitating that, making it happen. But I think also people that I think is criminal. And I look at it right now. Even right now, I think the fact that like those doctors that should absolutely be held responsible for doing this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even now, I think like I get like riled up about the fact that there's actually doctors out there that think that this is okay. You know what I mean? Like to even right now, but absolutely in a free society, I think that everybody that's a part of that, that's facilitating that, making that happen, including the parents, should absolutely be punished and would be because that is an aggression. Now, how exactly, just like anything else, is go ahead.
No, sorry. I don't mean to cut you off. I'm not exactly how would you punish them, but how do you differentiate then between what's just a parent's decision and what's child abuse in that regard? Because obviously we agree that it's child abuse, but let's say that you have this case and obviously I believe this kid has been coerced and he's high on like several different things, but Desmond is amazing. Who truly seems to believe that this is who I am and blah blah blah.
And there's absolutely that is something that is facilitated by way of his entourage, the people that are advocating that, including his, whoever's his or her or his parents. Definitely. Now but now as far as how you police that, you know what I mean? Again, this goes back to if anything, communities, right, agreeing that is a fucking issue, right? Like that is an issue, that is something that they've agreed that is a problem, and they will punish it through I don't know, all sorts of different ways. Insurance agencies. I think this is getting to where we start talking about like security and free market forms of that. I think it would happen in a similar way. But yeah, most definitely, I think that's an act of aggression. And so just like anything else in a more libertarian society, I don't care if it's minarchism or anarcho-capitalism or whatever, it would be punished. You know what I mean? Because that is an act of aggression upon, again, the people that are trying to make that happen for that kid. And then we are talking about them living, and that's, man, it's disgusting that they do that, but they are trying to live through their children, like live their personal. I mean, I was watching the and this may be a little bit of a side note, but watching the whole MSNBC, like it was a town hall, and some chick is smiling. This is the mother. Of course, the father wasn't around. Is giving this kid the microphone, right? And he's reading the script, right? Of course he's reading the script. Yeah. And he's like, I'm a 11-year-old transgendered. I'm like, whoa. And I was like, and all the crowd is like it's fine.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
And I'm sitting here like, what is this? Like, am I the only one that sees this as an issue? But this is where culturally we've gotten like, we're fucked. Like I'm gonna just say it straight up. And this is where I lose a lot of libertarians, in a sense that I don't try to make my libertarianism about my personal social preferences, social approaches. Now that I think is beyond social. I think that is, again, we go back to aggression. I don't care what your social preference is, but I don't try to conflate, the two. You know what I mean? As far as me being like, okay, I think this community of idiots that condone this, there's a problem there. You know what I mean? Structurally, there's a problem there with the people that are a part of this community that thinks this is fine, right? And says nothing about it. There's a problem there. That's my what I view. That's through the lens that I see, and I wouldn't try to force people to view it that way. But that's because I separate the two. I don't try to conflate my social preferences, whether it be religion or anything of that nature, with the fact that I am a libertarian. Which in some libertarians they can't not do it. I see a Libertarian Party all the time, which is why I think their tactics are bad, because they try to make libertarian. This is why I always hated the whole meme that. I'm libertarian. I want I want gay couples to be able to grow weed farms and and protect them with their assault rifle. Because what it assumes is that everybody's okay with that, and it's not. That's not what libertarianism is about at all. Again, it goes back to the private property rights. There may be people for or against whatever social dynamic it is. And it wouldn't, like the LP, they try to parade around like, let's say, sex work and stuff like that. And it's a bad look, not necessarily in the fact that people, are into that lifestyle, but more so they try to conflate that with libertarianism. And like there are people that are libertarians that have a big problem with sex work. You know what I mean? Like they're not for that. You know what I mean? But they're trying to conflate the two, the philosophy with their personal social preference, and it's a recipe for disaster. And it's also it's not what libertarianism is about.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you were right when you said it's definitely a problem with the communities. I'd say that brings it back to an issue of pattern recognition for me. But we could talk about that another time if you so desire.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I guess with that I can let you go then.
Okay.
I mean, cool. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the conversation.
For sure.
Would you be interested in doing something like this another time, maybe on the Jewish question or something? Yeah.
We'll whatever. Just hit me up, and if we can get it set up, we'll get it set up. I got a line. I got a line of people that want to have a discussion.
For sure.
Hit me up.
Thanks for penciling me in.
For sure.
I didn't mean to come across as aggressive.
For sure. No, it's all good. It's all good. Well, again, I appreciate you. You being on.
Yeah. One last thing. Would you mind if I clipped our discussion and put it up on my channel or something like that?
Go ahead. That's fine. I'm not
awesome.
gonna again.
I was just
talk
curious.
about IP. You know what I mean? Like, do what you may. do what you may, man. Like, do what you may. I'm not gonna be sending goons to come kick your door down because you uploaded a portion of of the video. So that's
All right.
that's fine. We're fine.
Okay, awesome. Thanks a lot, man. Take it easy.
No problem. Yep.
All right, bye.
Okay.